All right, what's up, everybody? Happy Saturday to you. It is a casual Saturday here at my house, and I honestly barely even out of my pajamas. In fact, I might be wearing what I did sleep in. But I did put on a little makeup for you, kind of over the residuals of last night's makeup. I got in late last night. I worked really hard, and I just crashed. And I committed the cardinal sin when it comes to skincare. Do y'all know what the cardinal sin is? It is going to sleep in your makeup. It's terrible. It's terrible. And I did it. And now I feel horrible. I hate myself this morning. But what is up, everybody? So we're going to talk Blake Lively updates. I'm afraid that the CIA agent is not going to make it today. That was some false advertising, and I'll explain why in a little while. But what's up, everybody? I see you all here. And but did I brush my teeth? No. I did, but then I also committed another cardinal sin. I drank some milk after brushing my teeth before I went to sleep. So then basically didn't I, just because milk has sugar in it, didn't I just basically bathe my teeth in sugar before I went to sleep? Anyway, enough about me. Hello, everybody. So yeah, the CIA agent is not coming. And that's because the amount of effort that it would take for me to make the CIA agent appear is a little beyond me today, seeing as how I could not even get out of my pajamas today. And so you'll understand in a moment what I'm talking about. I will explain. But the CIA agent will make an appearance. I can guarantee will make an appearance within the next couple of days, because as you may or may not have heard, the CIA is in the news right now with the Blake Lively stuff. That's right, because Blake Lively has hired apparently a former CIA agent and chief of staff for the director of the CIA, and I'm forgetting his name, Shapiro, right? And yeah, so he's going to be on her team. And I suppose they announced this. I thought they had leaked it, but it turns out her team actually went on record discussing this. I guess they're trying to intimidate us, but that's not going to work. It's going to take a lot more than that. So people ask me what is up, and I'll talk more about the CIA thing in a little while. So people ask me what is up with this picture? What is going on here? Well, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I don't know. Maybe this is kind of a Rorschach test for people. So I guess there's a couple of interpretations that I'm seeing people online coming up with here and their reactions. One of them is the way that I thought of it is they're basically telling Blake Lively, you don't have the cards you think you have. Don't tell us how to feel. And what was the other statement? Oh, wait, let's just go back and let's have a little look here, just to refresh our memory as to what we're talking about. This is, look, I don't even know what to think of this. I honestly don't. I know a lot of people are celebrating it. I don't know what to think of it, but it is sure entertaining as hell, isn't it?
If you're here in Texas and you have an old heating or air conditioning system.
But I am in Texas. All right.
Not playing cards.
Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said thank you once? This entire meeting? No, in this entire meeting, have you said thank you? You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war,
He's not speaking loudly. He's not speaking loudly. Your country's in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No. You've done a lot of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not winning. You're not winning this. You have a damn good chance of coming out okay because of us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country, staying strong.
Sorry, my bad. I know this is a war. I know it's not there's a whole tragic aspect to this and everything. And I don't pretend to know what should have been said here or not said, but man, it was funny. So this is what I think Blake Lively needs. And that's what I was trying to communicate. Oopsie. That's what I was trying to communicate here with this photo is someone needs to sit her down and have a talking to and with her and tell her that she does not have the cards that she thinks she has, and don't tell us how to feel. Oh man, oh man. So I want to talk about a couple of things here. First of all, a little bit of happy professional news. Well, this thing is still basically a hobby, what I'm doing on social media, but we'll say some happy news for my burgeoning social media empire, as it were. I was cited by none other than Candace Owens, who I know is a perpetual source of interest and occasional frustration as well for my audience and for me. But the audio, the Ari Emanuel audio that I got thanks to the help of a citizen journalist, and thank you again for that, because it was really, I would not have made that connection and gotten in touch with that person without you. But anyway, the audio, I was wondering if Candace was going to play it, because she had just the day that I came out with this, she had talked about this, about the missing audio and the missing podcast, and basically reporting on the whole fiasco at Freakonomics, where they claim a once in a career, once in the history of their show mishap, where this extremely incriminating interview with Ari Emanuel that made him look terrible and really hurt him legally and hurt WME and hurt Blake and Ryan. Well, it just didn't get recorded. They went to the trouble in Freakonomics, apparently, of putting together this entire live podcast in this really fancy setup in LA on Wilshire. And they got these really high-powered guests, including Ari Emanuel, his first interview since the whole Blake Lively fiasco. And this was a big, big deal. And they recorded, and then oops, we didn't record it actually. So I don't know. I still think it's extremely suspicious. And the fact that the host gave us this really long-winded on and on and on and on, dog ate my homework, as Candace Owens put it, explanation, to me really makes it even more suspicious. So I don't know. I don't like to, thank you. Love you. Got some coffee, y'all. Coffee, and I'm going to try not to spill. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't like to accuse people without evidence, but man, it certainly looks shady. And I'm not saying that the host at Freakonomics is lying. He seems like a genuine guy, although y'all, it's very easy for people to lie if they're in media and seem like genuine people. It's not hard. But he seems like a genuine guy, so I don't know. Maybe he was told one thing. Maybe his team was told one thing. And that wasn't the truth, or maybe they were threatened within an inch of their lives, honestly. I mean, now Blake Lively's got CIA people working for her, so who knows, dude? Was the CIA guy doing an operation here that night? He had his people doing like a Mission Impossible infiltration of the location of the forum, and so that when Ari gave this disastrous interview, they just kind of swoop in, wearing like ninja black and stuff, and they take it, and then in sort of Manchurian candidate-like fashion, then they erase the memories of everyone present and implant new memories that are inaccurate, sort of like in Inception, what Leonardo DiCaprio did to Ken Watanabe, if you remember that. So anyways, I don't know what happened, but I got my hands on, citizen journalist and I got my hands on this audio, and it's the biggest scoop that I've ever gotten. And so I was wondering if Candace was going to play it, and then if she was going to play it, if she was going to in any way cite me. And she did. This was on the screen. This was on her screen for like 3 minutes, because she played the entire clip, the entire clip that I put up. Now, there was a much longer interview that I still have, actually. It was like a 45-minute, 50-minute interview that Ari did with Freakonomics Live, but the rest of it was not pertinent to the Blake Lively situation. There was a bit of interesting audio where he was talking about Sam Altman and Elon Musk, and apparently this is some controversy, but I'm not up on the tech stuff and the tech world competition, so I don't really understand it, but I do have that. If anyone's interested in that, contact me. I'll give it to you, or I'll put it up or whatever if you want to hear the other things that were said that night. But anyway, yeah, Candace, thanks so much for putting this up for 3 minutes. That is advertising that money cannot buy. And again, I thank you for that. And it was also, look, great things happen in groups. It was also great to get to finally go on a show with Zach and Dana, and of course, Ari, we've done shows together before, but it was wonderful to get to go on Zach Peters' show and talk with him and Dana and Ari. And I thought it was really interesting. And I showed a clip from it on my live stream yesterday, but you should go check out his channel and find it. It was a town hall. And I think he wants to start doing it regularly, like every week. And I don't know if that means that I'm going to be a guest every week, but I'm sure, more than occasionally I'll be on there. So put that on your schedule, so to speak, your calendar every Friday. I think Friday morning. Yeah, probably every Friday morning. Zach's channel will be having a roundtable with Depp versus Heard commentary. Depp versus Heard. Yep, it's Deja Vu. No, I'm sorry. Blake Lively, Justin Baldoni commentary. It does feel like Depp versus Heard Deja Vu, though. So much of this does. Some of it's different, but it does. So much of it feels like that. I have to say, as far as Candace goes, I keep going back and forth on her and like my feelings about her. Now, I don't mean in a sense of the work that she's doing for Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, because I think that she is a huge net positive for Justin Baldoni. I should say the work she was doing in this saga for Justin Baldoni. She is a huge net positive for Team Baldoni because she has a reach that no one else has. Huge viewership. And she has shown herself to have a knack for growing that viewership with this story. And so I know that at times there are differences, creative differences between some of us content creators and how we feel about how she's putting out some of this information or whatever. But I do feel like Candace Owens and the content creator community have now had an opportunity to sort of size each other up. And I think that there's a kind of a mutual respect here instead of a suspicion, which there may have been at the beginning. Now, all of that having been said, there are numerous times whenever I listen to Candace Owens' show where I'm just, and people, I'm sure this is the same for me, people listening to me, there are times when I'm just sort of cringing. Like, I love Sigmund Freud. I'm a big fan of Sigmund Freud. Doesn't mean everything that, he was a pioneer in his field. And so he at times came up with some crazy theories. He believed some things that turned out, he changed his mind on, turned out to be wrong, what have you. But I think he is a huge contributor to Western culture and our ideas about the psyche that we take as being absolutely foundational. And so, and I've done podcasts on my philosophy channel talking about Freud and Freudianism, Neo-Freudianism, and I'm also a big fan of Jung and Lacan and some of these people. And so, I hear Candace Owens at times, and it wasn't just the other day. I understand the other day when she was trashing Freud, she was doing it in the service of rebutting some attacks that someone had made on her, which is totally understandable. If someone's attacking you, then they are now opening themselves up to the same. And so I had no problem with that. But she did talk about Freud and how this person who's attacking me, and their Freudian ideas at one point. And I've heard her talk on podcasts before and on Twitter about her dislike of Freud. And so I when I listen to her talk about Freud, I think it's really a kind of a mischaracterization. And one that no doubt she believes, but that I think is a kind of a strange filter through which to view him or to describe him. And I'll give you just one example here, and then I want to move on, talk about other things. But she mentioned yesterday on her podcast that Freud had come up with, how do I want to put it? That Freud had collected evidence from his interviews with his psychological interviews with people, evidence of pedophilia and incest, and that he had tried to cover that up in his research. Now, I know what she's talking about here, but this is a real, in my opinion, real mischaracterization of Freud. And I understand that Candace was saying that she got this from someone else who was writing about Freud, which is also a problem because the more divorced you get from the actual texts themselves, and when you start getting into people interpreting Freud or writing about Freud, especially if they're coming at it from a controversial position, then you might get a mischaracterization of that person. But I understand what she's talking about. So here's the interesting and sad thing about Freud's work initially, is that when he started psychoanalyzing patients, and a number of his patients were wealthy young women, because in Victorian society, psychotherapy was a very, very new thing. And so when you had a woman, maybe a young woman, adolescence or a little bit older, going through difficulties, you know, growing up and womanhood and all of that, and maybe developing some psychological difficulties, these wealthy families would send their wealthy daughters to Freud. It's like, oh, I hear that he's the mind fixer, so to speak, right? Go see him, start therapy with him, right? And so what happened is, in the early days of his practice, his research, Freud heard from many, many young women that male relatives were molesting them. In other words, these women would come in, they would have issues of various kinds. Through psychotherapy, it would come out that, oh, my daddy did this to me, or my uncle did this to me, or whatever, right? And here's the thing, it was happening so frequently. These women were reporting this to Freud so frequently that at first he just could not accept that this was going on this scale in upstanding looking families. Because as you all know, y'all, there's so much that goes on, sadly, behind closed doors. Look at the Menendez brothers. From the outside, they look like the perfect family. That's what everyone says. Oh, they're wealthy, they're perfect. Look at high achieving father, good looking sons, nice homemaker wife. And then you scratch beneath the surface and you find horrible, horrible things were being done to those guys. And so what happened is Freud at first, this was all new information. He was a pioneer in the field of psychotherapy. No one had done this before, and he's getting all of these reports. And so at first he thought that they must be fantasies. And so this initially fed into his idea of the Oedipal, or I should say Electra complex, the idea that women develop a kind of as a part of their maturity, their maturing, their development, they develop a kind of a crush or even romanticized view of their fathers, which I think there's actually, truth in this, right? We had the saying, daddy's little girl, or he's a mommy's boy or whatever. I think people understand that there is an interesting cross-gender thing going on in parent-child relationships, though not talking sexually, right? And so what happened is there was a time in his career where Freud interpreted these women reporting these terrible things, and even also like boys reporting things too, but they're reporting these things that were happening to them. And Freud thought that he explained it as fantasy, a kind of a fantasy. And later in his career, he did change his mind. But I think that that's probably one of the things that Candace is referring to. So my point is not to call her out here, but it's just to say that there are always times when I'm listening to her, just like with the Macron thing, which I still don't buy I've listened to every episode now that she's done on the Macron story, and I still don't buy it. But all of that having been said, she is a very smart lady, no doubt, a great communicator, and she has guts. And y'all, here's the thing. So few people have guts these days. It's so rare. And when she announced the other day, Candace Owens, that she had been talking to Harvey Weinstein for 2 years, and that she was going to start a series in which in some ways would seek to vindicate Weinstein. Yes, I know it's broader than that, and she's trying to implicate people in Hollywood and the media, but she is also in this seeking to vindicate him from the criminal stuff. She says he's a very immoral man. She says he ran his studio like a brothel and he intimidated people. And it sounds like she concedes there was harassment going on at times, but she thinks that he was framed on the criminal stuff. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but I respect her courage on that. And so where I've come to at this point in my attitude toward Candace, I guess what I've been sort of thinking over the last few days is the title and tagline of this old movie. I don't know how many of you have seen this movie or not. Dr. Strangelove, and here's the tagline that I love, Dr. Strangelove, or, come on, make it a little bigger, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love the Bomb. So this is how I've been thinking about Candace Owens, How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Candace Owens. So there you are. Candace, if you happen to see this is my new tagline for how I think about you. How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Candace Owens. We will see. We will see where things go, but I'm keeping an open mind on her and this situation. All right. So again, my apologies, y'all. The CIA agent, she is not coming, he or she he or she is not coming. But let me tell you, to people who are new to my show, let me explain to you what I was talking about. I'm going to show you a clip from a previous show that I did, an interview with this CIA agent. And then I think it'll make a little more sense. But watch this. I'm going to explain a couple of things about it that are funny. And then I want to talk a bit about the latest news regarding Blake Lively and the CIA agent that she supposedly hired, and some other stuff. All right. But this is what I was talking about. I don't know how many of you have been following the Depp Heard situation, and I don't know how many of you know this story, but about 6 months ago, there was a Tortoise podcast. Tortoise is this podcast series by Alexi Mostros that was purporting to show a link between Johnny Depp and Saudi Arabian prince and ruler Mohammed bin Salman. And the thesis that they put forward in this was that Johnny Depp became friends with Mohammed bin Salman at some kind of an event in Saudi Arabia, like a car racing event or something. He became friends with Mohammed bin Salman, and Mohammed bin Salman then, as a gesture of friendship and goodwill, unleashed the Saudi Arabian government's bots to basically, in the lead up to Depp versus Heard and during the trial, to just basically artificially inflate the number of people who were, for instance, liking my videos, liking Popcorn Planet's videos, that Umbrella Guy's videos, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know the argument with bots, basically inflating the support, the natural support that Johnny Depp was getting online. Now, I absolutely don't believe this. They keep trying to use this argument, too, when it comes to Baldoni versus Lively. I just think it's ridiculous. But what was funny is on this Tortoise podcast, they interviewed a supposed former spy who claims to be either a former Canadian spy or a former British MI whatever spy. I don't want to go back and listen to it again. It's been a while. But they were interviewing this spy who disguised, right, anonymous, claimed to see the telltale signs of bots and foreign intervention in the Depp versus Heard social media paradigm. And so it was the most ridiculous podcast. It was the most ridiculous interview. This so-called spy sounded ridiculous. And he also sounded like he was being piped in from his grandma's basement or something. So anyway, what did I do? I decided I was going to do a little parody. So I'm going to show you just a bit of this because I do think it was funny. And they thought it was funny on Pop Culture Crisis. My friends over there actually played it and they laughed. So this was what I was wanting to do today for you all. But I just don't have it in me today. But this will be forthcoming very soon. Something like this related to the new Blake Lively news. So here we go. Just a couple of minutes of this. I think it's funny.
Where you live, we know where you are, and we're going to come find you, and we're going to hurt you.
I thought at any time my story and my work would be revealed.
So I was stationed in Kabul, Afghanistan during the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard trial. Being a seasoned CIA operative, it was essential that I oversee our strategies in Afghanistan at the time. And in fact, at this point, we were trying to arrange an assassination of the leader of the Taliban, but that obviously did not work out. But anyway, I was taking a break one day from my spycraft, and I was just scrolling through Instagram and Twitter and TikTok and YouTube. And all of a sudden, I was inundated with all of this pro-Johnny Depp propaganda, all of this pro-Johnny Depp social media. And I hadn't even been keeping up with the situation. I didn't even know that there was going to be a trial. Suddenly out of nowhere, I'm just inundated with all of these pro-Depp social media posts. And so at that point, I'm thinking, what is going on here? And my spy's sensibilities were suddenly aroused by the strangeness of this situation. And I thought, this feels very familiar to me. Oh, yes, this is what we tried to do in Nicaragua in the 80s. And it didn't work out. We ended up, some people ended up being called before Congress. But anyway. And so it seemed like a black op. That's what it seemed to a seasoned CIA operative like myself. It seemed like a black op. And I thought, this is not normal. This is not organic. This has all the traces of a complex system, misinformation system at work here. And so I promptly contacted, through my CIA connections. It was very easy to do. I promptly contacted Elaine Bredehoft, and this was during the trial. And I said, Elaine, you probably have no concept of the larger forces at work here. But what you and the dear Ms. Heard are facing is not normal. It's not organic. And so I offered my services at that point. And I said, being a seasoned spy, CIA operative like I am, perhaps I can help you identify who is at the root of all of this social media misinformation and these bots and everything. Because it can't just be reasonable people that, have seen the evidence and heard the audio and everything and come to reasonable conclusions. No, there's something far more insidious at work here. And so Elaine took me up on it, and I conducted an extensive review, and I used all of the tools of my spycraft that I had honed over many, many years. And I determined that actually what was going on is that someone on Johnny Depp's team was doing all of this, was responsible for all of it. And moreover, that Johnny Depp probably only has maybe 100 to 200 actual human followers, and the rest are just bots.
Sorry. I think that I will bring back that spy to talk to us about the latest in Blake Lively versus Justin Baldoni, which, as you probably heard, is that she's hired an ex-CIA honcho as crisis PR manager. Now, I know that most of you are familiar with this story, so I just want to look at it quickly here. But this was the news the other day. All right. Okay. Oops. So Blake Lively has hired a former CIA. Oh, I need some Prime groceries too. No, thank you. God, I hate pop-ups. Okay. Blake Lively has hired a former CIA powerhouse to be her crisis PR manager as her legal drama with Justin Baldoni continues to rage on. The Gossip Girl alum has tapped Nick Shapiro, the CIA's former deputy chief of staff and senior advisor to former director John Brennan, to help with legal strategy. Page 6 confirmed Friday. The litigation team from Ms. Lively retained Mr. Shapiro to advise on the legal communication strategy for the ongoing sexual harassment and retaliation lawsuit occurring in the Southern District of New York. Now, here he is. All right. It's pretty common, y'all. I know a lot's being made of this, and I am too, honestly, just for shits and giggles, really. But it's pretty common for government people high-level government people in all parts of government to, once they retire, to trade that in, as Candace Owen says, to trade that in for big money at a lobbying firm. As you know, most of our leaders in Congress, as soon as they exit the door, as soon as they leave office, then they go to work for lobbyists as a lobbyist for some big firm, making tons of money. And to me, it seems so messed up, because their value to those firms is that they have a lot of contacts and a lot of high level, sometimes secret contacts that they can leverage, that they can supposedly pull for their clients. And so what I think is going on here is not that this guy is going to be involved in some below the level, hardcore espionage or anything. I think that what's going on here is this is just a guy who's really adept at working between different institutions and bureaucracies. So he's probably really hooked in with media institutions and organizations. He's hooked in with people in the government. He's hooked in everywhere, right? And so I think that this is just what we're getting here is someone who's probably really, really on top of their game, has a ton of connections, and is not going to be afraid to use those. Now, my critique, though, or my skepticism here when it comes to this guy, and we talked about this yesterday on Zach's show, my skepticism here is, okay, but does this guy know his way around TikTok? Because this new media landscape where this whole saga and the dialogue around it is being driven by content creators. It's being driven by small level content creators like me, or like people who are bigger than me, Popcorn Planet, Pop Culture Crisis, that umbrella guy. And then you have a couple of people who are closer to mainstream. I don't mean mainstream in their ethos or their outlook, but mainstream in terms of the huge audience they have, like Candace Owens or like Megyn Kelly, who are reporting on this heavily. But mostly it is still an alternative story, an alternative media story. And so I just have to wonder if this guy, the Shapiro guy that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds have hired, if he is as locked in as or hooked up as he is with all of these different institutions and big shots across the globe, does he have the skills or the understanding to master what's going on TikTok or even on Twitter X or YouTube or anywhere, right? And I really feel like it's kind of what, speaking of political stuff, it's kind of like what John McCain used to say about, he would talk about a game of whack-a-mole, that sometimes in these conflicts, you're going to try to take out one leader or one bad guy, and then another one pops up in their place, right? And this is a problem that we actually have a lot in our foreign policy, and it's probably part of what's driving our frustration with the Ukraine situation, even, is that we have this feeling as Americans that we intervene, sometimes very improperly, we intervene in these various situations. And then what happens is we think we've taken out a bad guy, and then you've got more bad guys, supposed bad guys, replacing him, right? And so we see this like even with like Syria, right? So anyway, my point being that I don't see how this guy, even with his CIA skills or whatever, I don't see how he is going to make a dent in things for Team Lively-Reynolds. And maybe in the CIA, as Candace Owens suggested, he learned a lot of propaganda skills, because as people have said, like a lot of what you're doing in the CIA, to certain degrees, a lot of what they're doing is propaganda at times. But I don't know, again, it's one thing to have experience doing this like in a government capacity or doing this in a political capacity, but doing it with the social media beast, I just don't know. And so let's say supposedly that this guy could somehow discredit Candace Owens to get people to stop watching her or to stop caring about her opinion somehow. Well, that's just going to still leave Megyn Kelly and all these other content creators doing this. And so I just think that it's probably the CIA thing is much ado about nothing, but we will see. And the truth is, it really is an unprecedented game. And at this point, nothing that anyone does at this point will surprise me. Now, I wanted to say before I go, because we're doing a short show this time, but I wanted to say a few things about Ari Emanuel, because there's a couple of things that continue to bother me about what happened at that Freakonomics event, and also about what he said there. So here's what I don't get. Okay, we have heard for years and years that Ari Emanuel is about as tough a motherfucker as you can get. I love this here. He's about as tough a motherfucker as you can get in Hollywood and the entertainment industry. And I know the other day, Ari Jacob was talking about how she had known someone from the cast of Entourage, and that person, I forget which actor it was, told her that the real Ari Emanuel stories were so much worse or crazier or more hardcore than the stories that they ended up using in Entourage for the character Ari Gold, who was based on Ari Emanuel. And so I have always heard throughout the years that this guy was basically at the top of his game, that you couldn't get any more like shrewd or rough than this guy in terms of the way that he executes his job in the surface, of his clients. If that is so, this is my question. If that is so, if Ari Emanuel is really not only such a beast when it comes to PR, but also insightful and shrewd, How is it that he made such gigantic premeditated blunders at the Freakonomics interview? He made that totally uncalled for baloney remark. Totally uncalled for. It did not in any way enhance anything that he was trying to communicate. All it did was make him look ridiculous, exposed him as being a liar, because everyone knows that you know this man's last name. He was your client, and you've probably been hearing about nothing else for the past 2 months since this fiasco really ignited. It makes you look like a liar, Ari. It makes you look ridiculous, and it also could be taken as a racial slur, which I don't, but it could be. It's weird, it's insulting, it's dismissive. So that, to me, was indicative of someone who is completely off his game. Completely off his game. I almost wondered if he was drunk or something. So that's the one thing. And then he incriminates himself so unnecessarily with some of the comments about firing Baldoni. Like it wasn't even elicited by the guy interviewing him. The guy interviewing him, it wasn't even really going there. And he's like, yes, I fired him. And then he said, yeah, I'm ride or die. I'm ride or die. These things are incriminating. And he must have known that this gets to the very heart of Justin Baldoni's claims about him and WME and Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively. So I asked this question yesterday when I went on Zach and Dana's show. I said, in light of the fact that Ari Emanuel is supposed to be such a shrewd, insightful, savvy beast of a man when it comes to this realm, this arena, right? He's like Maximus or whatever. Why did he make such big blunders? And Donna, spelled Dana, pronounced Donna. Donna said, I'm sorry, I mispronounced it earlier. Donna said that she believed, this is an interesting theory, that the fact that the day before this Freakonomics recording, Ryan Reynolds had posted to his Instagram a picture of him with his arm around CAA, the head of CAA agency, Brian Lord. And so what Donna said is that this was basically a threat to Ari Emanuel and WME by Team Ryan Reynolds, Blake Lively, to get your ass into gear and do something, defend us, help us, or we're going to take our empire and our cards and go to Brian Lord at CAA. And so basically, Donna's theory is that Ari Emanuel saw this and realized that if he had to do something dramatic and public, that would make some kind of an impression for his client. And so he went to this taping knowing that he was going, as he admits, he says, I expected these questions. I wrote it down. I made some notes, right? He said, I expected these questions. I made some notes. So basically what he said was premeditated, right? So he had planned, Ari Emanuel, that he was going to say these things in order to signal to Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively that he's going to do more for them and that he's on their team and he's going to play ball, right? So I understand that, and that's a brilliant theory, and it very well might be the case. But my question still stands. Why did he do such stupid things? There are ways you can show support. He could have said positive things about Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds, and he could have made the case for them in various ways without coming out flat out saying, I fired Baldoni because I'm ride or die with them because I want to make them happy, right? And that baloney remark, which is completely unnecessary. So my question still stands, even if I understand, okay, the catalyst for him doing something, why did he do something so clumsy and so self-incriminating and stupid that would generate bad PR? And here's the thing, it was so obvious. It was so obvious that he had blundered that the podcast disappeared, right? I can imagine, and we were talking about this yesterday, that as soon as this shit came out of his mouth, Ari Jacob pointed this out the other day, that these people go everywhere with their publicists. These high-powered people, when they do public appearances like Ari Emanuel here, that they bring their publicists everywhere. And so Ari Jacob yesterday on the show theorized that what happened was Ari Emanuel said this stuff, made these blunders, these huge blunders on this podcast. And then the publicist was sitting out there in the audience or to the side of the stage and went basically, what the fuck? This cannot go out. This cannot be aired. And so then basically, as soon as Ari Emanuel gets off the stage, the publicist finds him, because there was another guest after Ari Emanuel. Okay. It wasn't just Ari Emanuel gets off the stage and the recording is done. So there was time, is what I'm saying. There was time between Ari Emanuel getting off the stage, And then when this recording was supposedly going to end, right? And so there was plenty of time then for the publicist to say to Ari, what the fuck? This cannot air. Ari says, okay. And he goes about working his magic, so to speak, and he gets it taken care of in some way. Maybe the host knew, maybe the host didn't know, but it's too much of a coincidence. I would pretty near bet my life that this was intentional, that this thing disappeared or was never recorded. And so I think that's what happened, but still it just doesn't quite answer the question of why make those blunders in the first place. And I guess the only thing that I can figure, and this is my theory here on Ari Emanuel and where he is right now with this whole situation, I think that despite the bluster and despite the arrogant exterior, confident, arrogant exterior, baloney, baldoni, whatever, I think that this guy actually, maybe for one of the first times in his career, is scared pretty shitless, because he and WME and Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively are being sued for a ton of money. I'm sorry, y'all, when you get into the hundreds of millions, then this isn't just something that can be shrugged off anymore by anyone. They're being sued for tons of money. They are now stuck in a legal and PR battle that is going to go on for at least a year. I think probably more, as there'll be delays. My experience, a year and a half, 2 years, and it's going to be incessant torture for him and for his clients. And here's the thing. I'm sure that the more stress that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are under with all of this, remember, they're still his clients. And Ryan Reynolds and Deadpool, all that stuff, and all of his businesses, still a big draw here for WME and Ari. And I am sure that the more stressed out that Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are getting, the more they've got to be on Ari Emanuel's case, like on the phone, texting in all caps, with exclamation points, whatever, do something. What do we do? This is terrible, whatever. And so this guy is just going to be, I talked about how Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively are going to be stuck in a torture zone until this is over. Well, this guy is as well. So I think that maybe for one of the first times in his career, he's actually spooked. Maybe not scared shitless, but spooked. And I think that there was no way in hell that he predicted. He should have, if he's such a smart, shrewd guy, but I think there was no way in hell that he predicted that this thing would blow up like it has blown up. And I think that he is still back on his heels. Maybe that's why they've had to call in the big CIA guns, is to get somebody who has some calm about them or has their head on their shoulders. But I think he was thrown back. And so I think that this is what happens when someone is spooked, is they start making errors, right? People start when they're panic. That's the first rule of thumb in an emergency or in a problem situation, is don't panic, because you start making errors. And I think those huge errors that he made at that taping, that Freakonomics taping, I think that those indicate to us that this is a man who actually is pretty spooked inside with everything that's going on, and doesn't know what to do and doesn't know what the play should be. It reminds me, y'all, of when you're watching a football game, kind of like what happened actually with Mahomes. I know, Vanessa, you're saying to them, don't talk politics, but the football might be more controversial. I don't mind people talking politics on the stream so much, but I think the concern is that it can really derail a conversation, especially if people are getting really worked up and insulting, right? So I don't know exactly how my mods are handling it, but I don't mind political comments or conversation, but I just don't want something. I don't want something that's going to derail everything for everyone. So they're good at keeping an eye on that stuff. But talking football, it reminds me of when, just even like the last Super Bowl game, when the quarterback has the ball, but it's just not, the night's not gelling for him. It's not going well. And what happens? They get spooked and they end up either getting sacked or they end up having to throw the ball away. To me, what was going on here, this was Ari at this Freakonomics thing. This was Ari basically getting spooked and throwing the ball away, throwing the ball some random place, and it got intercepted. It was basically a fumble or an interception going on here. And so that's my reading of it. And I think that it gives us a window into the real panic and the attitude over at Team Lively-Reynolds for him to make this mistake. And I'll tell you one more thing. Listening to that audio of Ari that we leaked, listening to that audio, to me, this sounded like bluster just barely covering nervousness. To me, when I listened to him with that bluster, that baloney baldoni, and him saying, I don't really follow this stuff, and kind of stumbling around at times on his words and stuff, this sounds to me like someone who's extremely nervous, and is therefore not sure of how to navigate the situation, and is saying things that are like blustery and overly confident and arrogant to try to cover over the nervousness. So I think that was one of the big telling moments of this whole thing. And I'm so happy that we do have the audio, and I hope that Team Baldoni is able to use it. Let's look at the super chat. Ian Thomas says, always appreciate your insights and coverage. Thank you so much. I'm going to, I think I'm going to leave us now. Good 45-minute session. Thank you for joining me. And I'll try to get the CIA spy out to you soon. Thank you to my mods. It looks like we've got Vanessa today. Might only be Vanessa. So I appreciate you as always. She does great work. And thank you to my usual other mods as well, Laura B, AJ, and Rebel Bird. And yeah, y'all have a great day, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.